that's one way to put the interviewer at their ease.
What, to tell you about past mistakes? Or to mention Emma Thompson?
Just to leave it at all. So.
Right, let's go.
A bit crazy.
So, sound is recording.
Okay.
If you could just begin by introducing yourself.
Right, I'm Kim Harding from the Edinburgh Festival of Cycling.
And Kim, tell us about the Edinburgh Festival of Cycling. What is it?
It's intended to be a cultural celebration of cycling in all its forms. A lot of the festivals tend to be, they get a few people together to ride and maybe they have some races and things, but I thought it could be something more than that. Edinburgh's a festival city, has festivals for all sorts of things, so why not cycling? And I thought we'd bring in a wider range than just the riding and things. Obviously that's going to be a major component of it, but also want to be cultural events. So we're going to bring in poetry, we're going to bring in art, photography. I'd love to bring in fashion, lots of different ideas. So to celebrate the bicycle and the culture of the bicycle in all its different forms. We'll also have, of course, lots of rides and lots of opportunities for people to get out on bikes. But we're thinking of trying to bring in comedy and maybe to get some academic stuff. Cycle transport has academic. So we're trying to cover all basics. So it'll be sport, it'll be culture, it'll be utility cycling in a way, it'll be about all forms of cycling. So try and introduce things people may never heard of, things like bike polo. So we'll have a bike polo exhibition matches, maybe a come and try session. I've got the Voodoo unicycle team who are trying to think of a world record they can go for, because they like the idea of breaking world records. So we'll have possibly some sort of unicycle world record attempt going on anyway. Probably also a unicycle come and try session where you can actually learn to ride a unicycle.
And just rewinding slightly, how did you personally kind of come up with this idea? What's your interest?
Well, I've been riding a bicycle for more years than I care to remember. I accidentally got into cycle campaigning when a few friends of mine got together and we decided to pedal on Parliament to protest about the conditions for cycling. That was an outstanding success. And I thought, well, actually, if there's all these people interested, why don't we have a festival to celebrate cycling? And Edinburgh, being the festival city, is the ideal place to do it. So that's
because it's funny, isn't it? Pedal on Parliament. That was the first one was last year, and it did feel almost carnivalesque, didn't it?
It was a real celebratory feeling. It came as a complete surprise because it was a discussion between three of us basically on Twitter that set it off. We started out when we first applied to gather on the meadows. We had this form that said, "How many people do you expect?" And we put down 300, thinking, "Well, we'll be lucky if we get that, but it sounds good." And on the day, 3,000 turned up. So we were taken completely by surprise, along with everybody else. And actually, when we went out and cycled down there, people were really having fun and just enjoying the atmosphere, because we effectively stopped the traffic, and the police said it was one of the most fun protests they'd ever been on. We had the entire police cycle team. They have a cycle team for Lothing Waters Police in Edinburgh, and their entire team came out and thoroughly enjoyed themselves. And it was such a fun event. I thought, well, follow up. How do we follow that up? And one of my ideas was to have a festival of cycling. So I wrote a blog post about it, because that's what you do. You write a blog post and then you tweet about it and invite people to join you. And the next thing I know, there's a team of people surrounding me, and we've now formed a company, and we're going to make this thing happen.
So when's it going to take place?
It's going to take place between the 15th and the 23rd of June. So we've got 2 weekends and the week in between, and we're trying to make sure there's something happening every day through that period. Obviously most of the riding type events, the activities will be at the weekends, but we're also going to try and make sure there's plenty of things going on during the week for people to do as well. Invited Mark Beaumont, the Around the World cyclist, to come and talk to us. Also got Juliana Boring, let's get the name right, who's the first woman to set a world record for cycling around the world. She finished her record-setting ride in December last year, and so I've invited her over from Italy to come and talk to us. And that's been part of the Ladies' Day, which is named Heels on Wheels. Not my choice of name. It was Tracy Griffin, who is a fitness trainer.
And is that there's going to be a fashion show? Is that the same thing?
We're hoping to have a fashion show as well, which will be another event. Not absolutely certain what's going to happen with the fashion show at just the present time, but we're still hoping that will go ahead.
Because
we're learning on the fly, so to speak, because never been done before. So we're learning on a very steep learning curve. But we're hoping that we're going to get a sponsor for that, and that will go ahead.
Okay. Because one of the other things you do in terms of cycling is the Edinburgh Cycle Chic website, isn't it? Tell us about that.
Cycle Chic, it's about normalising cycling. The whole Cycle Chic movement started in Copenhagen with a bit of street photography. Mikael Koen Andersen in Copenhagen took a photograph one morning on the way to work of a lassie in high heels on a bike and stuck it onto Flickr. And suddenly loads of people from around the world were commenting on this. And he thought, oh, this is perfectly normal in Copenhagen, but obviously in the rest of the world it's not normal. So he started taking more photographs and created this thing which he called Copenhagen Cycle Chic. And it inspired other people to do the same. He now owns the brand, and Edinburgh Cycle Chic is an approved part of the brand. It's basically just going out and trying to show that cycling can be a normal thing to do, and just make it ordinary. So you have people in normal clothes riding bikes as a way of getting from A to B. So you don't have to dress in lycra, you don't have to sprint everywhere, you can just simply ride a bike.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you just snap photos of people at everyday situations. I mean, when you say dress normally, what you really mean is trying to get the idea across that people don't have to be wearing professional lycra or, you know. A
lot of people feel they have to dress up to ride a bike these days. And if that's what you want to do, fine, that's fine. I can remember when for a while I lived in Aberdeen. When I first moved to Aberdeen, I found it rather scary, so I bought a yellow jacket. Having never worn any form of cycling gear before, I bought myself a yellow jacket, which gave me a little more confidence, but it didn't really change anything, because you can't make people look. You're told you've got to wear this high visibility clothing, but at the end of the day, if people aren't looking, they're not going to see you, so it doesn't really make a lot of difference. And so I learnt that really you don't need to dress up, you can just ride in ordinary clothing, and most places in the world where cycling is common, people only dress up in lycra or whatever if they're going to cycle for sport. I was in Innsbruck a few weeks ago. There's snow on the ground, it's -5, and everybody's just simply riding around in ordinary clothes. They've got woolly hats on because it's cold. I didn't see a single helmet. If you go in summer, you'll see people wearing helmets because they're going mountain biking or they're going road biking, and they'll wear the rest of the gear to go with it.
And it means when I'm done.
Bike. So in winter, it's simply a way of getting from A to B. So everybody just simply dresses normally. In summer, you'll see people dress for sport because they're out to do sport, and it's very popular there.
And do you think it would, if people did feel like it was, if they could dress normally, or if they could dress smartly, or they could dress however they feel comfortable, with or without helmets, do you think more people would cycle?
That's part of it, it's normalising, but it's also you've got to make it safe. I think that's one of the big differences here. It doesn't feel as safe as it does elsewhere, and that's to do with infrastructure. And that's a major issue. If we bring the speed limits down, if we try and provide more friendly environments, then you'll get far more people cycling normally. A lot of the photography I do is around this area, around the meadows, because it is a safe place to do, and so they get people behaving in a normal manner. Whereas on the roads, people have to rush because they feel they have to keep up with the traffic to be safe. and there is an element of that, and that puts a lot of people off.
And if you were to do some blue sky thinking about what Edinburgh should look like for cycling, or what it should do for cycling over the next 5-10 years, what are the top things that you would like to see happen?
I would like to see, well, first off, bring the metropolitan speed limit down to 20 miles an hour across the whole of Edinburgh, not just a few selected roads on the sides. I found the 20 mile an hour zone in the south of Edinburgh a real disappointment, because it missed out all the most dangerous roads. All the major roads were missed off, in spite of the fact that people were saying they wanted to have a Marchman Road included. The community councils were really keen on it. They were just left out. So that'd be a first. Also having better, proper cycle infrastructure, separated cycle infrastructure where possible. Leith Walk, the redevelopment there, was an ideal opportunity to put in decent, good quality, continental style cycle infrastructure. It's unlikely to happen because basically the transport department blew it, and that's a real disappointment. It wouldn't have cost them any more to do it. Tarmac is tarmac. As a Dutch engineer, road engineer, told me at a conference just recently, last year, when you're doing a project like that, it doesn't cost you any more to put in the infrastructure for cycling. We could be like a continental city. We could have a cycling culture within 5 to 10 years. If you look at other places, we've got examples of Seville and Barcelona, where they went from pretty much 0 to 10% modal share in the space of 5 years by putting in the right sort of infrastructure. Barcelona first started by trying to do it for the Olympics. They got it completely wrong. Things didn't join up, they didn't connect, and the whole thing bombed. They have they put in a cycle share scheme, and it just fell apart. They then changed the approach, and they put in infrastructure that actually joined up, connected, and suddenly it just took off, and it grew exponentially for years. They've got a slight problem with their cycle share scheme. It's become so popular that they're actually turning around to people saying, buy your own bike. Because everybody just simply rents the bike, rides from where they are to where they want to go to, leaves the bike off and goes away, and then they come out and get another bike and go across. So it's become a part of the public transport system. It's literally a part of the public transport system, the way it should work. But it's too popular in a way, and so they've actually started saying to people, buy your own bikes. But you can see in other cities, Portland, famous example in the US, where over a space of 10 years it went from 0 to being a cycling city. New York has suddenly taken off. They've put in cycle lanes, they've taken out traffic lanes, put in cycle lanes, and very interesting, they had surveys, economic surveys, done before and after, and they saw a massive boost in the areas where the cycle lanes are being put in compared to the rest of the borough, which it was put into. So economically it's great. And the council has commissioned several reports on this. They've got Jan Gehl. Jan Gehl was the guy who created Copenhagen as the cycling paradise that it is. He wanted to make the city, as an architect, people-friendly. So he persuaded the council in Copenhagen to remove 5% of the parking every year, the car parking every year, year on year. It took 30 years before anybody noticed that it was going on. It was 30 years before anybody complained that they couldn't find a parking space. And at the same time, the cycling went up dramatically. I mean, they hadn't quite dropped to this level we've got to. They've been down to about 5%. And now it's about 35%. And they said they didn't expect people to continue cycling through the winter, but they see a drop of about 5 to 10% during the winter. Most people just simply carry on. And part of the reason is because the infrastructure's there. When they clear the snow, the cycle lane's done first, to prioritise people actually using active travel to get around. So there's a huge opportunity there.
But essentially, if you don't invest in physical infrastructure, it doesn't matter how many nice maps you create or how many information campaigns or anything. If you don't build it, they won't use it.
Yeah, you've got to build it, and they will come. If you haven't built it, well, nobody's going to be there. I mean, another example, the Scottish Government now is spending millions of pounds on starting to put in infrastructure for electric cars. There is no demand currently for electric cars. But they are working on the principle, if you build the infrastructure, people will come. So obviously there's been a lot of very effective lobbying by the automotive industry, who realise that electric cars are their future, if they have any future at all. And they've got people to put in this infrastructure to encourage people to buy their products. But there's, at the same time, we have a huge demand for increased cycling, as Pedal on Parliament showed. We expected less than 300 people to turn out. We've said 300 on the original application form, and said to ourselves, well, if 50 people turn up, we'll be doing well. 3,000 people turned out, rode from down there down to Parliament, and we thought, wow. And there is a huge latent demand there, which is not being satisfied. The council has a target of 10% by 2020, and it's changed it from 10% of all journeys to 10% of commuter journeys, which is a fudge. It basically says they don't believe it's going to happen. Unless they have the confidence to actually do something, it'll never happen. You've got to actually take the confidence. You've got to get some leadership in there and actually do something. And if you do it, it will happen. The benefits are massive. It was a very sad thing on Newsnight Scotland a few weeks ago, where they had a great report from Amsterdam. Dave Brennan, a friend of mine who I was involved with in Pedal on Parliament, went over to Amsterdam and showed what it could be like there. We came back to the studio. There was a studio interview. We had Chris Oliver, who is the chair of CTC Scotland, sitting in Edinburgh, and we had a motoring journalist in Glasgow with the presenter. And this motoring journalist said he couldn't see why cycling was important when they could spend money on doctors and nurses. And then they didn't give Chris Oliver the opportunity to respond to that, which was a crying shame, given that his day job is a senior surgeon at Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. And I think he would have ripped this motoring journalist to shreds on that. The biggest benefit you get from encouraging people to be active is health.
And they just, the Royal, now let me get this right. Is it the Royal College of Physicians? They just issued a report about obesity being the single greatest threat. Try and get that right, but I mean, you know, that report came out not last week, saying that obesity is the biggest threat.
is the major problem, President. It's the major cost for the future. Our health costs are going up dramatically. We're now the sickest country in Europe. Scotland has become the sickest country in Europe. 20 years ago, that was Finland. Finland turned it around by promoting exercise. If you go to Finland, the country as a whole has a cycle modal share of 10%. In the highest cities, it's up to 30%. People say that, you know, people won't cycle because of the weather. Well, looking around today, it's a dreary cold day and somebody just rode past us. The city with the highest cycle modal share in Finland is up in the north end of the Baltic. So they get far worse weather than we do here, and yet people cycle. It's making it possible, it's making it convenient, it's making it easy that makes a difference. And if you invite people to do it, and you make it easy for them to do it, they'll do it. And it brings down, in England, where they had the cycle demonstration towns, they found the return on investment was 19-1, which is a massive return on investment. And a large part of that was due to health benefits. You get some people saying, well, the health benefits will take years to kick in. But if you look at the literature on health, and they say exercise, it actually has an effect on people's fitness, on their health, in weeks. If you get people who are sedentary taking exercise, within 2 to 3 weeks their health improves. There are huge opportunities. Are we picking that up? There are huge opportunities there, and basically all we need to do is have some leadership, and that's the key. That's the thing that's really lacking. is leadership.